permission to say that. And then out of that comes a richness. I found in making a short story, I'll suddenly describe something as being porcelain white. I'll fall in love with that word porcelain. Long after I've forgotten that it's white and that I've rewritten it 4 times, somewhere in the midst of one of those convoluted sentences will be that magical word porcelain, because it's got a resonance about it that kicks off of other things. You take 2 words, lipstick, neon. Neon, lipstick. Lipstick, neon. Very expressive words. Lipstick neon is a special color of light. See, neon lipstick, now that's a special color of lipstick. See, and the language just juggles in such subtle and such specific ways so as to make, I believe it's possible to write a book and write it with sentences that have never been written before in the history of man. I was just trying to think of a line like that.
This will be edited, but can we jump in and ask a few questions?
Sure, please do. Please do.
George, did your interest in writing at the age of 24 come from reading? Were you a reader first, and then that compelled you to be a writer? Or did you have any formal training in writing?
You know, Shel, I'm an 8th grade dropout. I failed the 6th grade, had to take it twice. So it's hell to be in a classroom where you're just a little bit bigger than everybody else, and yet you're no smarter than they are. It's hell to be in a room where you're dumber than everybody else in the room, and you're always faking it. And your eyes are just bad enough that you can't really clearly see the board. And that they programmed you as a child to be called Clayton, and the minute you go into school they start calling you George. And every time they say George, you're zoned out on something. And then George, 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 they're finally talking to me. So they must have thought me a real bad mental case. I was a great daydreamer. Loved to look out the window, just reverie, just let it flow, just like it's preparing for dreams. Just let the mind be a drunken monkey and come up with anything it wants to. And then the teacher will say, George, you're looking out the window. It seems very interesting out there. Would you tell the class what it is that you're looking at? Looking at the swings. Well, what are the swings doing? Nothing. They're just there. What can you say? So, yes. Did it come from reading? Yes. Did I need reading as a child? Yes. When I was at the age of 14, I found myself in an orphanage. Strange place for me to be. I thought I would be there till I was 21. That was the mythology. Once you're in here, when you're 21, then maybe you can get out and be a citizen, unless you're adopted or something. And fat chance of that because my mother was still alive. And yet my mother was an alcoholic. She had been one most of her life. So that she was really in no position to be like responsible for me. So I found myself and my brothers and sisters scattered throughout the state institutional system. Age 14, in a room that was about the size of this one, Roy. It had a big coffee table in it. And on both sides of the coffee table, benches. And at the ends, benches. It was a fairly large table. Or was it 2 tables side by side with benches back to back? I think it was 2 tables sitting across in this room. And all the walls were lined with shelving, and on the shelves were big sets of books given by people to the orphanage. A set of Dickens with 2 volumes missing, a set of encyclopedias with something gone, a bunch of, I read Jack London. I must have read at least 20 different kinds of volumes by Jack London. I read The Star Rover there the first time. You gave me a box full of the galleys of The Star Rover that you had published. Well, you published The Star Rover. Well, I read that in that state orphanage, and I read a lot of other things by really celebrated writers, including Edgar Rice Burroughs and the Lovecraft guys, the Lovecraft type guys, I should say, the A. Merritts and people like that. I found Gathered Darkness and 7 Footprints to Satan, The Moon Pool in state orphanage. And so by reading all of this, my mind was filled with all of this lovely fantasy, you know. H. Rider Haggard really speaks to young people. When you read Haggard and you read about she who must be obeyed and the strange goddess of that this all represents and the kind of immortality that the moon pool represents, these kind of ideas become the warp and woof of your life. They're more religious than religion. In religion, you just go to heaven. In science fiction, you go to the 10,000 hells. You know, it's a more exciting place to be. You know, science fiction is all, well, I consider science fiction to be a religion in the way that it celebrates the books of the holy. You will find the book of Ezekiel firmly ensconced in the world of science fiction. Everybody knows that that guy is talking about a spaceship. You read the book of Ezekiel from the holy book, and it is a sci-fi story. And if you can interpret it any other way, if you do not see space beings and color TV and nuclear material with a half-life of a year in that document, I will really be very surprised, because I can get right out of there. This is a science fiction story. And all of the books of death, transcendence, deal with going beyond where we are, to enter a time warp, or what do they call it, a wormhole now, or folded space. The idea that here and here can be right together if you can just find a way to fold the space together. You know, you don't even need a time machine if you can achieve folded space.
Get the time stream.
I came up with a new title, Shell, called Darkness is Faster Than Light. Isn't that provocative? I could write a book about that. When you turn on the light, the darkness, you don't see any darkness, do you? No darkness there. Gone like that. That light, that darkness can flee like, and turn the light off. It's back so fast. Darkness, believe me. If you think the lords of the light, if you think that perhaps Yahweh, Jehovah, wants us to be soldiers for the light, who is telling the real tale here? I find myself, for example, in looking at the book of book of Genesis, that when they say that the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters and God said, let there be light, fine. Lovely story. It gets to the part where he says, don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or you will surely die. And then the serpent says, wait a minute, not surely die. The minute you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, your eyes will be opened, and you will be as gods, become as gods. Now, who was lying there? God or the serpent? Because when they did eat of the tree, their eyes were opened, and they did become as gods. But they made the mistake of thinking the garden was real. Aha, God's got one up his sleeves. The garden is not real. This is like a fourth. On a scale of 1 to 10, we're sitting in a number 4 reality, or a number 3 reality. Because I myself have experienced a number 4 reality, or 5 reality, whichever values you're using here. And I know that these realities go on a higher level. I know that I've had experiences that were more 3D than sitting here talking to you people. This is a 3D experience. It's also a self-conscious experience because I'm aware of the cameras. And I'm aware of the purpose of the undertaking. But I myself have gone through stages of being just an ordinary consciousness, where I'm hardly aware of myself. Then was put, during the early part of my life, under intense self-consciousness, to where I got to watch what I'm saying or what expressions are on my face because I'm going to be called for it. Oh, you don't look like you're enjoying yourself, you know. No, I look like I'm enjoying myself, really. You know, everything is very good. It's a wonderful life. It's just fine, Jimmy. Don't send me to the cornfields, because I wouldn't have that feeling at times that there was an invisible camera on me all the time, that there was nothing that I could do that was in private. And I finally had to kick the worrying about it. Stop worrying about whether I dressed right, or whether my fly was zipped, or whether my hair was combed, or whether I had food on my lips, or what, you know. I'm just not going to worry about that. And so then I went from self-consciousness back to simple consciousness, with a few little stops along the way of what I consider to be cosmic consciousness. But I know there are higher and higher levels of it.
In the orphanage, were you a loner, or were there other friends in the orphanage that you could relate to and talk these things over or discuss with?
No. No, I had no communication with the others on any level of reading about anything. I talked a lot, and I gained most of my attractiveness as a young person from my ability to see a movie and remember it, and then tell somebody the movie and get them involved. I mean, we could spend an hour telling a whole movie, and then he did this, and then he did this, and I can remember it all and describe it, see? And so being able to read a book and then to tell somebody what's in the book, and to compress a 2-hour experience to a 10-minute experience, I could always gain some centrality. And then I was always good at faking people out. For example, I remember as a young boy, about 14, 15, that I made friends of these 2 kids, one named Orville and one named Max. This was a little before I went, no, a little after I came out